Okay. All right, good. I'm ready. I'm definitely ready. Morning, everyone from Philadelphia. I didn't say good morning, but I did say morning because it is morning. I think. I didn't sleep. Did you sleep? 51% of the people in ModPo are from outside the United States. Some of those 51% live in countries that are run by fools and knaves. Maybe we've just joined you. Maybe the 51% joins the 49%. It is simply a solace to know that 51% of the people involved in this course are interested in experimental poetry coming mostly from the U.S. or in response to the U.S. are interested enough to stick with us. And that is itself a bomb. B-A-L-M anyway. Ken Hay, who is a really great ModPo citizen this year, wrote about, in response to the video, Week 9 video on chants, poetry, and mourning, Jackson McClow's elegy, communal elegy to his friend Peter Moore. And this is what Ken says. The video discussion on chants, poetry, and mourning is wonderful and rewarding. I have always wanted to associate my understanding of chants and chaos in relation to the present time, and I am sure it is right to do that. We live in our world today. But one takeaway for me from the video is that the aleatory poets are getting us to respond to the chaos and chants that have always been there. The ancient Greeks, who defined democracy both as a word and otherwise, tackled this problem, and they gave order to their world and let the disorder in from time to time. We have two ModPo-vians from Australia, Alice Allen, who's a longtime ModPo person from 2012, and Eleanor Smagorinsky, who is a longtime ModPo person from maybe 2013 or 14. They were, one of them, Alice, is from Melbourne. By the way, I recommend her podcast. She does a poetry podcast. It's really good. And the other, Eleanor, from Sydney, they don't know each other. They're from a big island nation. And Sydney and Melbourne are, kind of far apart. Not as far as they could be. It's not like Darwin, but still, it's far. And they were in New York City, separately, individually, and they both went to a writing workshop at the Poet's House in lower Manhattan on the Hudson. And they recognized, in their contributions to the workshop, they recognized ModPo in what each was saying about poetry and turned to each other and realized that they both had ModPo in common and that they had come all the way across the world to find that they had ModPo in common. And Zach, here's a photo of Alice and Eleanor at Poet's House. The world comes to New York. This is the two of them there. And yesterday, before Brexit mania-ishness hit this country, I got this smiley picture of these fellow citizens of the world of poetry. Today we have Davey sitting just to my left. Eric, would you come to the table? Do you mind? Davey to my left. We have Emily to my right.
Yeah.
We have Gabe to my far right.
Hi.
Hi, Gabe.
Not politically far right.
I know that. You have to scooch so I can see our friends. We have Max there from Chicago. Hello, Max. I know that we're not going to be able to contain your pessimism today. I really admire what you've been saying in Facebook, and I hope we'll stick to chapter 9.2, but we don't have to. Jake Marmer coming in from Palo Alto at 7:06 a.m. out there, and my dear friend Erica Kaufman from the Hudson Valley. Hello to all of you. Anna Strong is by the phone, and we already have a caller. So Zach, I'm just gonna hold up one of T's postcards just to get us started. T. De Los Reyes from Manila. Do the work. And there's the coffee. I think I might stop being a decaf guy. Anna Strong, who's on the phone?
We've got our friend Philip Drexler calling us from Austin.
Okay, great. Hello, Phil.
Hi, Al.
How are you doing?
I'm fine.
Okay, good. Did you want to talk about Week 9, Chapter 9.2, the aleatory chance operations poets?
Indeed.
Great.
What am I looking at? Do the work.
Do the work. Yeah, you're on a delay, though.
I know.
Keep your sound out. Yeah, you're a pro.
Yeah.
Why don't you make a comment or ask a question, and then we'll have you hang up so others can call, and then we'll see if we can respond to it, Philip.
Well, Al, I'm hearkening back to this week last year when you proposed the question of whether using this chance method to express grief was an appropriate way to do so.
Yes, sir.
Because it's such an unexpressible emotion. And it just so happened that the Texas Book Festival was last weekend.
Say that again, the what?
The Texas Book Festival.
The Texas Book Festival. You're in Austin, Texas.
One of the best book festivals in the country. I highly encourage anybody who loves books to come down for it sometime. It's at the state capitol. Mrs. Bush started it when she was the first lady down here.
Which Bush?
It's wonderful. Laura.
Laura Bush, okay.
Yeah. It's a wonderful book festival. Great authors. Lots of wonderful discussions all weekend long. And I went to a signing by a couple of poets who had written books about grief.
Yes.
One of them was a poet named Max Porter. I don't know if you're aware of him. He's English. In any case, he wrote a book where he had the entire poem be a dialogue between Ted Hughes's crow and a couple of young boys who were bereaved.
Mm-hmm.
And he read a couple of passages. Quite beautiful, very well done. So I proposed that very question to him and the other poet, who also has a very nice book that was on a grief theme. So I proposed that very question to him, based on our discussion last year. What do you think? Does unexpressible language, is that the best language to express the unexpressible?
Yes.
And he said some interesting things. He said, I think that what sets us apart from the animals is our ability to try to express things with language that can't be expressed.
Yes.
I thought that was very well said,
Good.
And the other things he said that's going to stick with me the rest of my life was, he said, our greatest achievement as humans is empathy.
Yeah.
I think that's really profound.
Yes.
So those were just a couple of points that I gleaned that were based on our discussion that I just thought I'd throw out there for everybody to think about.
Thank you so much. We will discuss it. It's a great way to start today. Thank you, Philip. And I hope everything's well in Texas this morning. And
going fine.
We'll talk to you
Getting
soon.
ready to finish up the last day of rain for the entire month of November, which followed an entire month of October where we got no rain.
Oh,
so
boy.
It's just typical Texas weather.
Yeah. All right. Well, hang in there, Philip. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you for calling.
Bye, Al.
Great. Just want to run down, everybody, the pieces that we're talking about this week. And I think we can respond to Philip's comment and question in response to Jackson McClow's experimental elegy, Vocabulary for Peter Innisfree Moore. But just to put it out there, because the question could be asked generally about why use quote unquote difficult language to deal with loss and pain. We have John Cage's Writing Through Howl. We have McClow's elegy just mentioned. We have Jenna Osmond's Dropping Leaflets, which is a response to the so-called political white noise post 9/11. We have Bernadette Mayer's list of experimental poetry, teachable teaching options, and we have Joan Retallack's poem made from lines from discarded books called Not a Cage. So, I'm looking around. Jake, so the question about loss and mourning. Generally, I think all of us here are in favor of experimenting with language of grief so that it never becomes trite and pat and expected. And I think everyone here has been through funeral services and memorializings of various kinds and felt the shallowness and emptiness of language because it's inadequate. This poetry seems to respond to that, and in fact, all of ModPo does. Do you have something in favor of experimental language in response to grief and loss?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen this with Tristan Tzara and Dada movement in general, that this was their response to World War I. And you've seen it, you've seen that same impulse in a lot of European post-World War II poets as well. Paul Celan, obviously. Perez, is that how you pronounce his last name? Oulipo, poet.
Oulipo.
Yeah. The guy who invented N+7. Is that Perez?
Well, Oulipo is, of course, the French group that organized around these procedures. Yeah.
Right. So those folks clearly dealt with profound grief by a completely disorienting method of assembling meaning.
Emily, you've written on this topic.
I have.
Do you want to say something about this?
Well, yeah, I'm kind of struggling for words, but I guess thinking about loss on a personal scale and on a national scale, the question that it always kind of asks if you care about art is if you should care about art, if art has any positive meaning to suffering, and if it can intervene in it or articulate it properly. And I don't really know, but I do know what type of language unequivocally fails, and it's the language of platitudes, it's triteness, it's language which doesn't even try to be commensurate with the experience. And this poetry this week isn't my favorite, but in this moment and in moments before in my life, I value and take heart in a project which sees language as having something like moral seriousness, as something that needs to be experimented with because it still needs to be held to a certain type of standard. So yeah, the question of grief and this art is one I think about a lot.
We have among our poets this week John Cage, Jackson McClough, and a Cagean, a student of Cageanism and a student of Cage is Joan Ritalik, who's a colleague of Erica's up there at Bard. And so there's a lot of influence. And those three people, Joan is, and the other two were, alas, they're both deceased, very serious. Not like you wouldn't sit around with Jackson and slap your knees and laugh. Cage, I think, took a certain amount of pleasure from certain things in life. Chess, mushroom gathering, some other stuff that he liked to do. He's a fun-loving guy, but they're very, very serious. Very serious. So I'm going to read, and Jenna Osman is also influenced by that side, I would say the non-antic side. The antic side of Cageanism we're going to see next week with Kenneth Goldsmith, who's a neo-Dadaist clown performer of the high hilarity of early Dada. But this week, there's no such clowning on the part of most of these people. So when Jenna responded to 9/11, Jenna Osman, by sensing the presence of bullshit in public language, she decided to do something that a lot of people take as a non-serious strategy. An aleatory response, a chance response. Most people would say, what the fuck is that going to do? What kind of political efficacy can you get out of that? No one's going to understand you. You're just being random. Why don't you participate in the conversation so that there can at least be a yes, no, right, left, white, black, as it were, conversation. And Jenna is among those who wants to absent herself from it. So I'll read what she says, and then I'll ask Gabe if he wants to stand by this strategy as at least potentially efficacious if he wants to. And then we'll turn to Max. We'll turn to Max to see if he has a response to Jenna's response to the white noise, the political white noise. She wrote, the title of this program is Finding the Words. This was after 9/11. Every day I look in the newspapers. I keep sensing the presence of what's not being told. Help me come up with a strategy to get through this white noise. She's quoting actually a congresswoman at the time. I don't have that strategy, says Jenna, except to call attention to components of that white noise so we can hear it for what it is. I'm going to read a piece made of words I found when reading transcripts of press conferences given by President Bush, Ridge, Rumsfeld, and Cheney in the last few days, she said in November, late October 2001. I read the transcripts, printed them out, I tore them up, and then I stood on a chair, and then I bombed my office floor with them as if they were leaflets, and the leaflets told me what to do. This piece is called Dropping Leaflets. Gabe, how do you respond to Jenna's response to say, I have to do something else with this language because I don't have a strategy otherwise to deal with the white noise?
I am in support of individuals' strategies to understand their political situations and what they can do as political actors, as writers, and as citizens or not as citizens in the climate that they find themselves in. And is that my response to it? No. Is that my writing practice's response to it? No. But I do think that something can be said for a sincere vision of a writing practice's ability to create change for one's own vision of the world or perhaps the vision of the world of another person. And so I would like to not gauge the success of these writings in their missions, but instead see them as establishing their own set of rules, both procedurally and morally or philosophically, and seeing what those can do from there.
I take one of the things that you've just said, and we're going to turn to Max then briefly and then go to the phone. I take it that one of the things that you've said is, a start is merely having the right or independence or freedom to choose a procedure that will work for you, as opposed to what might have been the case for most 19th century poets and earlier, in most cases, which is to say, I have given a set of tools in the toolbox. I didn't make the toolbox, and I didn't put any tools in it, but I have these, and I've got to work with them. What Jenna Osman, following Cage and McClough and others, is saying is, I need to come up with a strategy, forgetting poetic content for a minute, I need to come up with a strategy that will make me think, make me more rather than less conscious of the way language is being used to oppress me or limit my options.
I will say that I do agree with that summation of what I was saying, but I think also I would say, one thing I'm saying is that I have a deep respect for a gesture away from despair. And that's, to me, the gesture being made by Jenna and the statement there, and also from Cage's writing about his own work, and even McClough's. And though I think a lot of us, and especially today, will feel that like those gestures are incommensurate, a gesture away from despair is a thing that I have respect for, and I think can be worked with in a lot of ways.
Yes. So incommensurate is the key word today, because what any individual can do is going to be by definition incommensurate with the gap, loss, absence that is pervasive. So we're going to go to Max, and I'm sorry, Max, it's going to have to be brief because I want to get to the phone caller. But Max, what are your thoughts on any of this?
Gabe, I like a gesture away from despair. That's actually kind of reassuring. I have nothing to say. I don't know. It feels absurd to talk about randomness in the light of a terrifyingly organized hatred. I hope that the left can come up with something better to combat this. I love some of these poems, I love some of this poetry, but didn't stop the rise of American fascism.
Okay, Max, thank you. Organized hatefulness and also a lot of disorganized hatefulness, both. I guess, conspiring to organize, but still. Anna, who's on the phone on that happy note?
We've got Alice Allen calling us.
Alice,
Yeah.
the aforementioned Alice.
Yes.
How cool. Hey, Alice.
Hey, hello. How are you?
You have been with us since 2012, and is this the first time you've called?
I did call in 2012, but yeah, this is only the second time. So.
And you're in New York visiting from Melbourne.
That's right. Yeah, just here in time for ModPo and in time to meet Eleanor at Poet's House.
And I heard a rumor that you are going to travel to Philadelphia on the 21st of November for our Final Words webcast.
That is the plan. That is the plan. Yeah,
Stay
very
for lunch
excited
afterwards. We're going to have like pizza party and salad.
Oh, it
And
sounds so good.
probably
I can't wait to
champagne.
meet you all.
What's that, Alice?
That sounds good. I can't wait to meet all you guys. I've been
Yeah. Thank
watching
you
for years.
Thank you for being, I don't know if you heard the opening, but thank you for being one of the 51% of non-U.S. people in ModPo. Thank you for caring about what carefully anthologized representations of U.S. culture we've managed to put forward.
So thank you. And
That's a
and
memorable
look, your-
construction. What's that?
Your approach to poetry and ModPo's approach has really inspired me, and I know thousands of others, and it's really changed my approach to life, actually. So
Your
it means
approach
a lot.
to life. Thank you. Max is going to take more and more heart from this conversation, though he's put up
Yeah.
his generic picture of him on a day when he had a lot of sleep.
Yeah, and thank you all for being here today. I know most of you probably would rather still be in bed, so thank you.
Actually, I don't. I don't want to be in bed.
Oh, good.
Don't. Hey, Alice, before you ask your question or make your comment, I just wanted to plug your podcast. Would you tell us some keywords so that people who fire up a favorite search engine can find you?
Oh, thank you. That's so kind of you. It's poetrysays.com.
Poetry what?
And poetrysays.com.
Says. S-A-Y-S.
That's right. And it's really, every time I record, I just think of you and I think about the way that ModPo approaches poetry with enthusiasm. And that's what I try to do. But it's Aussie poets, so you'll get a taste of what we're doing over in Australia.
Yeah, so two thoughts about that. One is I listened to 3 podcasts, episodes of yours
Oh,
yesterday,
thank you.
and one was a close reading of Adrian Rich. And it was just, and you had already told me by some Facebook message or something that you, or email, that you modeled the close reading on ModPo, so that I was, and Rich is not in ModPo, she's in ModPo Plus, but not in ModPo. That's a complicated question, but I really appreciated the circling round, the boomerang, as it were, to use an Oz word. And really felt for a moment like there was a global community of people who wanted to do close readings, and so thank you for that. And the other thought I had is that if we get really ambitious, I think we should create yet another parallel syllabus that at least does some a summary of Anglophone poems from the Anglophone world that would basically correspond to the weeks. So we, when we get to that, if we have, all the time in the world, I think having an Australian poetry piece would be really great. Anyway, enough blathering. Do you have a comment or question about this material this week?
Yeah, I do. So I've been thinking a lot about Jenna Osmond's dropping leaflets and her comments that she wants to hear the white noise for what it is.
Yes.
And when you posted Jacques Blanc's What the President Will Say and Do this morning, I was listening to it and I really felt very comforted by that poem because it felt like it was expressing some kind of truth. And I know that's a big word, but I guess my question is, are people like Osmond and Jacques Blanc interested in truth? Or are they just interested in another version of reality?
Yes. Great question. Alice, do you want to stay on the line for a little bit? By the way, we have a book of poems for you for calling in.
Oh, yes.
Do you want to choose? Okay. So here are the choices. There's Jason. What are you laughing at?
The choice thing.
Yeah, oh, sorry. Lily didn't like it when I did. But these are like Anyway, Jason's Heat Wake, and also Julia Block's really great Valley Fever. Both are fantastic. And you want to just tell Anna afterwards which book you want, and then she'll get your address in New York, I hope.
That sounds great.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Stay on the line. We'll respond to this issue. So, Eric, Davey, and Erica, would you respond to this? So, one of the questions here is, I think she's right, Alice, is in thinking that Jenna is not trying to solve the political problem. She's just trying to create consciousness. Now, that's a half step, and I think Gabe and Max both implied, Max in particular implied that half steps are good, consciousness is good, but there are times when actual efficacy, has to take us beyond poetry, or maybe a poetry of answers. This is not a course on poetry of answers. So that's a problem in itself. So, Davey, thoughts on Alice's dilemma?
Well, I mean, this isn't a course on poetry of answers, but it is a course on poetry of procedure. And I think that the idea of truth is something that happens outside of time. That you get like, this is a true fact. This is true information. It's happening in a moment. It's sort of atemporal. And Osmond's project, Joan Retallack's project, Cage's project are militantly procedural. We need to be doing something. We need to find a way to engage with this language, to defamiliarize this language, to figure out how to put our hand through all of this political rhetoric, to be able to pull it apart, to be able to bring it back to its original materiality. I think that that's what I hear in Osmond talking about the white noise of political rhetoric, is that it's language that stops being material. It stops feeling like words.
So Robert Frost, in a poem called For Once Then Something, which is a sonnet in ModPo Plus, thought that truth was actually there to be seen once in a while at the bottom of the well, a little piece of white quartz. He's not really sure what it is, but he really believes in the truth. There is a thing at the bottom of the well, and I just need to get into a position to see it based on the sun shining down and based on the fact that I'm trying to look past my narcissistic view of myself. And the water clears for a moment, and I see the quartz. Jenna is, I don't know if militantly is the right word, but adamantly against that truthiness and more interested in the truth of the white noise, the fact of white noise as a state of language, and consciousness becomes a counter-truth. It's procedural. The how of what we say is as important as the quartz at the bottom of the well. Yeah?
Yeah, and I think that the reason that that's the case is that if I'm going to read a poem right now, it's to help me get through 5 minutes. Like, let alone get through the day. Like, I want a poem to take up the space between my grief and my grief. And the truth in a poem is not going to do that. And the procedure of dropping leaflets is a way to just like take up a small amount of time. And there's a radicalism in taking up a small amount of time and more time in the pursuit of having a relationship with language that's other than the relationship that's being aggressively and constantly given to me.
And Davey, do you know what else is not going to give you that solace? Someone coming along, whether it's Frost with his answer or a teacher who stands up and lectures. That kind of, I have the truth and you should know it. You take a course, there's a famous course here taught by quite an amazing scholar of World War II and the Holocaust, Tom Childers. And it's a course in which he lectures. And if you are delivered unto that truth, you're supposed to walk out feeling like you can make sure that it doesn't happen again. And I guess ModPo stands for, with all due respect to Tom Childers, an opposite view, which is you have to do the procedure. You can't just let Jenna do it. You have to do the procedure of cutting through the white noise so that consciousness is higher rather than lower at any moment. And that is going to be a solace that you've gotten your shit together.
Yeah, because it's obviously, we're sitting in a moment where it's obviously the case that we can like identify a horrible thing until, like infinitely, and, millions of people being like, this is fucking horrible, like this is awful.
Yeah.
That's not the response. So like, is there a way to have a procedural relationship with language that's just different? Because like, this is finally a division of rhetoric. This is a division of what language is available to whom.
Yeah.
I think this is all we can do right now, that like poetry feels like the locus of this, of like, what is the language that everyone has? Like, this is it.
Well said. Every parent struggles with how to pep talk the child and saying, you get through dark times. You have a long life. you know, my 401k is going to shit, but you're going to live another 50 years. This is a parental prerogative now we're about to get, but, you know, texting with my daughter, who's a frightened person, 22 years old, living on her own in New York. She didn't thank me last night by text for telling her what a bunch of truths to think so that she can fend off darkness. She said, "Thank you for raising me to think big thoughts and impose intolerance." What she's saying to me there is, you know, your mode of acceptance or listening to other people is what I learned, not some information that you gave me as a parent. And I think I'm tired of the truth that gets delivered to us because doesn't seem to be getting us anywhere. So if ModPo is about something, maybe it's about consciousness of the sort that Jenna is reminding us we need to do every time it's necessary to find the words, which was the name of the program. And I apologize for that, but kids get to me. I'm getting a hug from Davey. Oh, shit. Okay. Eric, I'm not going to ask you to follow that directly. I'm going to ask Erica to follow it directly. And sorry, look, Erica's giving me a face. I told Erica before we started I need my EK fix. So Erica's going to come on the 21st and we're going to hang out. Erica, will you say something about this? And then Eric briefly, and then we'll go back to Alice and we'll see where we are at this point.
You know, I don't know that I have anything to say.
What did Cage say? I have nothing to say, and I'm saying it. All right. You know what I'm going to do, Eric, to get you off the hook slightly? I'm going to play Yacht Blanc, and then you can respond to that. Okay, Erica? Erica, I'm going to play Yacht Blanc, and then if you feel like you have something to say after that, you can, and Eric, and then we'll go back to Alice. And this is Yacht Blanc. He's in this room years ago. He came, and he decided to do his Yacht Blanc-y thing by taking apart a phrase. And the phrase is what the president will say and do. What the president will say and do. And this is as prophetic a piece as possible. Here it is. Chris, we didn't test out the audio, but you're the man, right? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
You won't understand the introduction, so don't worry. Nope, I'm not getting it. Yep.
Short meditation on the title of one of her books.
Hang in, everybody. What the president will say and do.
The president will
You're laughing. Stop.
No, I just
Everything's going wrong.
what the president will say and do.
Yeah,
What the president will say and do.
we got it. All right. All right. Here we go. This is Yacht Blanc, what the president will say and do. You won't hear the introduction. It's hard to understand.
Arts in Los Angeles, and I met this writer Madeline Gins. And
He's
I
saying
would
he
like
met
to
Madeline
present
Gins.
a short meditation on the title of one
It's
of
a
her
short
books.
meditation on the title of one of her books.
What the president will say and do. 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 Thank you.
Eric.
When he does this, he's
stands before you as the press secretary of the President of the United States. It is a spectacular performance. And he gradually becomes unable to spread the BS anymore.
He gags on the words.
He gags on the words until the human function of language has stopped. So right now we are in a moment of grief, and we're going to go through various stages of mourning. But there's something on the other side of that, and experimental poetry definitely has a role to play about that. I'm just going to go back to one moment when I think of Allen Ginsberg saying, "America, I am going to put my queer shoulder to the wheel." Experimental poetry gives us a wheel to move because the rules in a government, in a society which is imposing limits and imposing orders and structures which are to the detriment of many of its citizens, maybe all of its citizens. The ability of artists to take the acceptable and to derange it and to change it and to expose the mechanisms which underlie this world in which we live is very, very important. That may not be where we are today. What we may need may not be, today, right now, here in Philadelphia, we may emotionally need a line like, "It is not to be believed," because that resonates for us. But
thank you, Eric.
The work in front of us will give us the opportunity to use these techniques in new ways to expose and to move, hopefully, to begin a process of moving forward.
Alice, are you still there?
I am.
How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad.
Okay. Did you want to have a final word on this topic before you hang up?
Oh, look, just you've all said so much and so beautifully, so thank you. And yeah, I really love what we were saying at the start about poetry just giving us a space between grief and grief. I think that's important today and for the next little while, and I think, yeah, just getting to the next stage, to the other side.
Thank you, Alice. And thank you for your work with the podcast, and thanks in advance for coming to visit us on November 21st for the
Can't wait. Thank you, guys.
All right. Gabe wants to say something, and then we'll move to a new phone call or a comment, and I would like, Carlos, you have the mic, so I would like you to either say something or take a look at your colleagues behind you and see if anybody wants to ask a question or make a comment. Gabe.
Yeah, this is going to be a little bit of a tone change from your comment, Eric, but I sort of, this is just on my mind, like about Jaap and about the last question, like the question that Alice asked was, is Jaap Blanc and are Jenna Osman and Jaap Blanc interested
looking for the
truth, right? Yeah. I think Jaap Blanc is interested in aesthetics, and I sort of could use some aesthetics right now, which so the reason I guess I'm laughing is that and maybe the reason me and Emily were laughing is Emily and I are both people who have lived with a lot of grief in our lives. And at a certain point, I think when you experience that, you say to yourself that it can actually be quite funny sometimes. And so, and the world is arranged in a very strange and funny way sometimes. And I think Jaap Blanc is one of those people who actually does recognize that. And the thing about that piece is that I actually find it very unself-serious. I find it really funny.
Yeah.
And
can I stop you there? Because you've said a lot already. No, I'm not chastising you. I'm just saying
I'm one of those people.
I have a thought. No, I think that Jaap Blanc, and I think he's on the Goldsmith side of Dada hijinks.
Yeah.
But I think that when he, in particular, does a poem like this, and it's rare, and I think that Kenny, when he does a poem such as Traffic, right, or when he, with spectacular miscalculation, wanted to do something with the Mike Brown autopsy, ventures from the Dada hijinks into a world of political discourse.
Yes.
And what we admire in next week of Goldsmith's work is not the New York sucks, Robert Moses should be hung by his fingernails because of traffic, because the traffic sucks in New York. And so it's kind of a political comment on city planning, traffic is, and it's been written about that way. But actually, he just thinks it's hilarious to listen to these voices on the radio.
Yeah, right.
And I think that soliloquy is probably on the hijinks side because there's very little content to this guy's week of conversation. The divide between the serious Cagean, McClovian, we have a lot of work to do side, the Jenna Osmond side, and the neo-Dadaism is best evidenced in an hour-long discussion that Osmond and Goldsmith had in this room in front of my class, English 88, about 10 years ago. It's recorded in full, and it's really worth exploring. It's out there somewhere. I'll make sure I put a link to it. And you get to see that serious ethical Ritalikian side arguing with the Goldsmith side, and it's really illuminating on the point that you made. Erica went away and then she came back, and I want to make sure that if she has something to add, that she gets a chance now to add it before we go to the phone. Erica, are you there? I guess she's not at the moment. Okay, good. So let's take someone on the phone and ask someone in the room, that either Carlos or someone of his colleagues, to respond. You guys ready for this? Sarah, you ready for this? No, okay. The person on the phone will pose a question that the gang in the room is going to answer. Anna, are you with us? Who's on the phone?
We've got our friend Jim Picarello calling us from Red Bank, New Jersey.
Jim from Red Bank.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Let's put him up. Jim, can you hear me?
Let's try that.
Jim, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yes.
Hi, great. Chris is going to bring your voice up in the room so we can hear you.
Okay.
Good morning. You're in Red Bank, New Jersey, a blue state, I think.
Yes.
How are you doing? How's ModPo?
I've been enjoying it.
Great.
Very
Do
much.
you have a question or comment?
Yeah. Well, first, I'm roughly your age. I've got a daughter and a granddaughter. In fact, I was in Pennsylvania the 21st, and you had just around the time of your ModPo. And the reason why I didn't show up was because I was visiting with my 22-hour-old granddaughter.
22 hours?
Yes, she was born the day before.
Hey, Jim, congrats, Grandpa.
Yeah, so I can feel your tears. Anyway, my question is this. You're covering a certain range of experimental and avant-garde poetry, but just before the course started, I started reading a book on the Black Mountain poets, and I only got through the first chapter.
Yes, Black Mountain poets.
One of the things they said was that the language poets, who I want to like but have a hard time liking, had a break with the Black Mountain poets, and it was a specific incident they gave, and it was a film on Louis Zukofsky in San Francisco, and I think someone named Watton, who was a language poet, gave
Barrett Watton.
Right,
Watton.
he gave a sort of interpretation of Zukofsky that he was just sort of words and language could just be sort of rearranged as lumber. And Robert Duncan, objected strongly to this. So it seems as if the notion of speech, the hated speech, may have a separate avant-garde tradition. And the question I'm asking you is to whether this notion of procedural poetry that you're going through has a sort of alternative. I mean, what are the regiments in the avant-garde? I mean, are you covering one small segment of it? And
Yes.
is there a segment that has to do with speech?
Yes.
A different kind of avant-garde?
Yes. Oh, wow, Jim, what a question. It's a question that needs a course to be answered because ModPo fails to go that far into the details, into the weeds of avant-garde poetic movements. ModPo fails utterly in engaging the Black Mountain group, which is very hard to define. Creeley, but we do Creeley in a weird kind of non-Creeley moment. There's no Olson here at all. John Cage is represented, a Black Mountain guy, but doing Mazostics. Denise Levertov is not even there, and it's not clear how she fits. So Jim's question is really complicated, and I'm afraid I'm not really going to be able to answer it, except to say that what we've tried to do in Chapter 9, 9.1 language poetry, 9.2 aleatory poetry in the Cagean mode that comes really from Dada and Duchamp, and 9.3, which is uncreativity, unoriginality, and conceptualism. Those are three modes of very different time registers, as an inadequate response to contemporary poetry. Another ModPo, or maybe ModPo plus plus, would start from 1975 or back to Black Mountain of the 50s and early 60s and simply be a course on the so-called New American Poetry, of which there's 6 or 7 different registers and also tons of exclusions. We are talking about putting a Charles Olson poem in ModPo Plus. From the visit of Kate Colby last week to the webcast. She's really interested in seeing how Olson's line from Whitman can be explored. And so we're actually going to do a ModPo Plus using Olson. So, Jim, your question is totally apt, and it's true that the language poets, in declaring, thanks to Robert Grenier, in declaring I hate speech, basically we're refuting Black Mountain at that moment. Where Zukofsky fits is extremely complicated, and we don't even have him here either. So, Jim, that's like the beginning of an inadequate answer to your question, but I'm really grateful for you that you asked about it. And if you can think of a way to get Black Mountain in ModPo, I'd love to hear it. And if you can think of a way for me to explain, even if it's an introductory audio, all the many different movements and lineages that derive from modernism in the New American Poetry, I'd also welcome that.
Can I make one more comment?
Yes, please.
One of the things I find is that I'm a freelancer, sort of in terms of this. I have no one to close collaboratively read with. And I had a hard time getting to Stevens, but I read him for many years. And I think one of the things you have to do with difficult poets, and I plan on doing this with Stein, who I would have completely dismissed before this course, is that you have to spend time and sort of marinate yourself in the language and diction and style of a poet. So what would be good is if there's some suggestions for the sort of loners or out there, sort of an autodidact corner, along with the teaching resources, sort of loner resources. That would be a good thing to have.
Great.
A good thing. I enjoy your comments very much, even when I disagree with them.
Thank you, Jim, and thanks for the thoughtfulness on this. I welcome an email from you so that we can engage in a conversation about this further, and I particularly value, treasure people who are you're not an academic, you're a freelancer, you have another life, but you're interested in this stuff in a passionate way. And this is really why we created ModPo, because we thought the university is insufficient in both making this kind of poetry and commentary on this kind of poetry available outside the academy, and also finding a way to include voices of people who love poetry but don't do it all day and are willing to marinate in it. And I respect what you're doing. I made ModPo for this. I am thrilled that 5 years later there's still enough interest. It means the world to me that you take it this seriously.
Well, I didn't have time to participate much this year, but next year definitely.
Great. The site is open all year, Jim, and we are going to start some slow po groups, mini groups, through ModPo, through the slow po off season. We're going to do them. I'm going to lead one. Joe Massey's going to lead a month-long group on Sid Corman. Jason is going to lead a group. Mandana's probably going to restart her Ashbery group. There's probably a Stein group. So I'll make sure that people receive announcements about the Slowpo groups, and then people can go into different corners. And everything in the site will be preserved permanently now if we have our way with Coursera, so that these little niches and rabbit holes and sideshows, boy, those are the wrong words, will be maintained. And so anybody coming along in the future can rejoin that conversation. Jim, thank you so much for the call.
Thank you very much. And
Fantastic.
thank all of you for giving me a sane place to go to this morning.
Oh, man. Thank you, Jim.
Bye.
Appreciate it. Carlos, do you want to look around you, or do you want to say something yourself?
Yeah, so I sort of...
Can we bring Carlos's voice up in the room?
Yeah, it is on. But
it is on? Yeah, you're in.
I sort of exchanged glances quickly, and I discerned that I don't think...
They're all looking to you, Carlos.
I don't think anybody wants to speak.
Okay.
What do you want me to talk about?
Week 9, aleatory poetry, anything you want. And Erica, I see you can hear us again. Yeah, I want to invite you to comment if you like further on anything. Carlos, just say what Cage, McClough, Osmond, Bernadette Mayer's experiments. Why don't I read a couple of those experiments and you can respond to them? Okay. Write a work gazing into a mirror without using the pronoun I. Set yourself a task of writing in a way you've never written before, no matter who you are. And one more. Attempt to speak for a day only in questions. Write only in questions. Do you think that's productive?
Yes. End of no. Yeah, I really like Bernadette Mayer's experiments. I took a class with Lainey Brown last year. Who's a fantastic
She's a
poet.
huge follower of Bernadette Mayer.
Yeah,
Lainey
and so
Brown.
we wrote through a lot of these, and I think her experiments are this really nice melding sort of between chance poetry and where we're sort of headed, where these constraints are, and I had a comment about this in class yesterday, these constraints are almost more important or equally as beautiful as the product. And so in these questions...
Say that again, because it's important.
Yeah, basically that the mechanism, or I like to say the factory or the machine that is creating the poem,
the process,
is equally as important, or perhaps more important than the end product.
Okay, so don't let me make you forget your other point, but let's marry that to the original conception of ModPo, which is that how you say what you say is as important as what you say. Indeed, how you say what you say is more important than what you say. Now we've come to a point in the course, and we learned from the language poets who, in the case of Hyginian and Silliman, applied procedures rigorously. Now we get to chapter 9.2, and 9.3 will be the same way, week 10, in which they're applied almost to the exclusion of content that makes any sense, or that makes overt sense. And so it's obvious that how McClough memorializes Peter Moore is more important than what gets said when the memorialization occurs. This is generally called conceptualism, though that's a deceiving word. Yes, and that's ModPo's point, if there is one. You had something more to say, but that was very cool.
I'm trying to think of what my more to say was.
Okay, I messed with you, but you made a really important point. Thank you, Carlos. Erica, did you have something to add? Because you were out for a while, and then you were also verklempt before, and I just wanted to give you a chance to catch up.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that I'm struggling today because this is actually the week that has the writers that have most impacted me and my own practice. In response to the Black Mountain question, I would encourage, I don't remember the caller's name, but there are a lot of really wonderful books about Black Mountain. There's one that's called something like Understanding Black Mountain Poets by Ed Foster that I believe has a whole section about the Watton-Zukofsky thing.
Yeah.
And for me, the way that I understand that is really the question of what do we look to when we look to experimental poetry? Are we looking for the poet or the language and the material of the poem? And for me, it's the latter. And one of the things that I think draws me to writers like Jenna Osman and Joan Retallack and John Cage is that through doing the kind of procedural work that they do, they create a certain kind of activist space where people can collaborate to make interventions on language. I actually would resist using the word aleatory to think about Joan Retallack's work or Jenna Osmond's work, and I'm kind of on the fence about it with Cage, and I also feel like I just think that chance indicates a little bit more of the writer's intention and the work that goes behind creating these experiences for readers.
Yes, Jackson hated the word aleatory. Also, he used the phrase quasi non-intentional, which I think is a really good.
Oh, that's amazing.
Quasi non-intentional. He always used that. Jake, I want to turn to Davey, who's going to read some tweets, but I just wanted to give you a chance to pop in on this question of chance. What is the relationship between chance or quasi non-intentional and improvisation? Which, yeah.
Yeah, that's precisely what I was thinking about. What is the difference? There was I believe it was Bernard Lewis, an important trombone player and also a jazz theorist, who kind of thought that aleatory procedures, as Cage called them, was Cage's response to improvisation, that jazz was something that Cage was not interested in and didn't want to go that route. So he went the aleatory procedure route.
Right. But they're cousins.
But they are cousins. It seems like a very similar sense that you get. I guess there's a bit more agency with improvisation. It's more of a conversation with yourself.
And there's less agency in aleatory procedures because, for instance, with the Mozostic, some of the work is being done by a machine. Some, not all.
Yeah. Right. So conversation with yourself versus overhearing a conversation.
Yesterday I asked Yesterday I asked in class, and we're English 88 ModPo is following ModPo all the way, and I asked, I think it was Savannah who's here. Yeah. I asked if anybody had ever been involved in a group performance and found themselves in the midst of an improvisation. I asked them to say what that felt like, and Savannah told us. I'm not going to make her repeat it, but it was in an ensemble, music, jazz, I think, right? And the description that Savannah gave actually matches a description of what Cage wanted when he asked people to try on Mozostics as a way of defamiliarizing or distancing somewhat the subjectivity that gets you to make choices. You want to let go of some of the choices, and that's partly what's happening in improvisation. So funnily enough, after we heap a little bit of skepticism on the Beats in the 50s doing their supposed improvs, we get kind of back to it in a much more severe non-jazzy world of 9.2. It's funny how those relationships form. Max, I'm aware that I want to hear from you more, but I first want to go to Davey to hear some tweets. And then what we're going to do is, and we won't take any more calls this morning, what we're going to do is we're going to hear from Max first on any topic, and then we're going to get final words. And I have a particular way of framing final words today. So, Davey, tweets? What kind of tweets do we have?
The tweets as a group this morning have been encouraging, and there's just been a
How did you
lot
pronounce
of
encouraging?
Encouraging.
Encouraging. You're already moving to Canada.
I am. There's a Canadian in me somewhere.
Oh, interesting.
My dad lived there for a long time.
Okay.
Lots of sweetness coming from people around the world. Christine Coates says that she's
South Africa.
Yep, sending hugs from Cape Town. She has an extra room if you want to leave and go stay there.
I think Sarah's ready.
Yeah, and says additionally, language has shown the way before; it will again. Colleen Knight sends us hugs from Canada.
For Al and the gang, you
Yes.
cut off that line.
Yes, it sends everyone hugs, all of us. Yeah,
I'm reading it out.
They're for you. They're for everybody. T, as always, has a million extremely lovely things to say. One of them is a Maggie Nelson line. I wept until I aged myself.
I wept until I aged myself.
Which feels helpful just
Maggie
thinking
Nelson.
about the way that poetry takes up time and space and also offers a kind of sweetness, that we're talking both about the way that the chance operations of week 9 of chapter 9.2 are ways of taking up space and dealing with language, but also these tweets are just, thinking about a poetry community as a way of taking up space with just a kind of like localized generosity, a way of having something good, some small good thing happen and making that happen to one another if it's not going to happen any other way.
That was really great. You're really good at that. Hakur Mar, just to add one more, hashtag ModPo Live, perhaps confronting incommensurability. This is a response to Gabe. Perhaps confronting incommensurability is what philosophy and ModPo have in common, the non-point of departure. Thank you for everyone who's tweeting. Max, I want to give you a chance to say something, and that this won't count as your final word, and then we'll go around for final words. Anna, can you get the door? Max, I invite you.
First of all, thanks, Davey, for reading those tweets. They were actually pretty uplifting and kind of cathartic. I'm glad to get a little bit of... I'm glad that we can have a little group catharsis this morning, hopefully, of some kind. That's all I got.
Okay. All right.
I'll have a
Good.
final
Well,
word,
we'll
though.
be back for a final word. Here's how I'd like to do final words today, and forgive the really crude analogy, or not crude, but rough analogy. The only moment, I've said this before, I think, the only moment of the film Apollo 13 that I like, because it's like, it's really a dumb film in a lot of ways, but there's a moment where everything has gone wrong completely. They have really almost nothing that's functioning on the spacecraft. And this is really pre-computer, so they just really have a limited set of options. And back in Houston, some bright guy says, okay, I know that things are not working, okay? Instead of making a list of all the things that are not working, let's start figuring out what we got. What's working? Just pick the pieces that work and put them on the table, and then let's look at them, and then let's decide to build using Band-Aids, baling twine, and Scotch tape. Let's build something that will work from the things in the broken machinery that we know work. Let's take an inventory. So what I'd like to do for final words is ask you to shout out to someone who is good, doing good work, somebody who gives you solace, or something that needs to be shouted out and is something that works, as opposed to the things that don't. So let's go around, and when we go around to the audience here, let's make sure that Sarah has something to say. Anna, do you want to start?
Well, yes, but I sort of already promised my final word to somebody else.
Oh. Well, you can do that person's and yours.
Okay. So this is from Anthony, ModPo's CTA. He publishes...
Anthony from... Which Anthony?
Anthony Watkins, sorry.
Watkins from West Palm Beach.
Yeah. So Anthony and I have been corresponding because he publishes an online poetry magazine called Better Than Starbucks. And he would very much like to...
It wouldn't take much, Anthony. All due respect. That was funny. At least Gabe got my joke.
I thought it was funny. He would really like to publish a ModPo anthology this year of ModPo poets. So if you would like to be published in this special edition of this magazine, he writes that you please send a poem to Better Than Starbucks 2. I guess there's a Better Than Starbucks 1. Better Than Starbucks 2 at gmail.com.
Okay.
The poem should be 30 lines or less, 200 words or less, nothing liable, personal, or what might be generally considered hate speech.
Anna, let's stop you there, and what we'll do is we will put that out.
Yeah, he's doing that too, but he just asked me to make an
Okay.
announcement also.
And now your final word.
Something that works. This. If nothing else.
All right. Yeah, I like that. Okay. Erica, are you ready for a shout out as a final word?
I would second Anna in this. I would also encourage people to look up the visual artist Adam Pendleton, who is very, very influenced by many of the people we're talking about today. And he had an incredible interview in a recent Brooklyn Rail where he really talks about the relationship between language and, you know, how we function and how our art functions in the world and what art can actually do.
Great.
So his work is incredible. I think everyone should look at it.
Can you say the name again?
Adam Pendleton, Pendleton. Also, I'll be more than happy to share links and stuff in my office hours.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Erica. Thanks for joining us. Jake Marmer, final words, shout out.
Oh, yeah. So I just want to give a shout out to Call Me Ishmael, which is a Jackson McLough poem in ModPo Plus, which I loved not only because...
Call Me Ishmael, the first 3 words of Moby Dick.
Yeah, I mean, I love Moby Dick, so that, but also the poem is just gorgeous in its musicality and the cadence, the sounds, everything about it is absolutely stellar. And I'll also just mention Jackson McLough's Light poems.
Yeah, those are beautiful.
If you are in need of light right now, just reading those poems, one after another, you walk off back into the world and you notice all these sources of light, colors and shades of light that are coming from everywhere. It's a talk about catharsis. This is an experience unlike anything else. And I would strongly point people in that direction.
Jackson McClough, Light Poems. Thank you so much. Max, shout out, something that works? Or someone? You work, Max. Congrats on the new job.
Thanks, Al.
Your 401k is going to shit, but other than that, there's at least monthly money.
It's a bad time to be doubling down on the United
Seriously,
States.
really bad time.
I have a French passport, and it's
Maxime.
like in my pocket any day now.
Well, thanks
but shout out to those are
thanks
things
for
that don't
turning
work.
the upbeat pep talk final words into a French passport.
Is the French passport the thing
think
that
that's-
works?
I think that's the thing that works. That's the thing that works. Love you, Max. Really, seriously. We're with you, man, and congratulations on the job. And your Illinois surrounds you.
Yeah, well, we're one tiny blue city in a sea of red.
Yeah.
It's
Although, if
something-
I hear one more thing about how often someone gets shot in Chicago from the rhetoric from the right, I'm going to puke because
Oh my
that just-
God.
how many
You don't
times did that
know.
get said in the last couple months? Chicago, and it's all about the connection of the mayor to the now lame duck president, and there you go. Okay, Gabe, let's get back up now. It's Apollo 13. What do we got that works?
My philosophy on a day like this, the day after, is to just do things that make you feel good. So I'm going to read 2 books that make
Sushi.
me feel good. Oh, I don't like sushi, but that's a different story.
Wait a minute.
We're not going to get into sushi. That's like so
I-
off topic. That's so deeply
I
off
had
topic.
sushi for breakfast.
Okay.
The
Anyways,
that's it.
Anyways, we're
Northern
focusing on
Jewish
things
thing,
that
not a
work.
Miami thing,
And,
you know.
actually,
Fish.
Miami
All the
loves
fish.
sushi.
Of course, it's fish.
Well, okay. Anyways. Okay. 2 books that make me feel good are The Book of Frank by C.A. Conrad and Ants by Sawako Nakayasu. So I will be reading those today.
Great. C.A. Conrad Nakayasu, and she's just started to tweet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Sawako. She's just started to tweet, so check it out.
She's so good.
She's fantastic, yeah. Emily Harnett, what works?
Well, I guess I'm gonna have to second Anna on this question, because I'll admit that I really didn't know how I was gonna wake up today and talk
Do a
about
webcast.
poetry, but I didn't know how I was gonna do that. Things feel pretty futile, but I don't think I'm alone in that. Writing and reading have been at the center of my life since I was a child. I think that probably describes a lot of people in this room. And so I'm really grateful that this room is here where we can talk about that and try to figure out how to care about art when it seems that art may be the last thing that the world needs. Yeah.
Beautifully put, Emily, as always. Davey, final thoughts here?
I want to. Too much Quaker school makes me want to hold in the light. The language I have. Another C.A. Conrad book, a book that came out 2 years ago called Eco-Deviant Somatics for a Future Wilderness. The chance operations this week have been making me think a lot about C.A. Conrad's somatic exercises. And if you're not familiar with Conrad's work, somatic exercises are basically embodied procedures that take sometimes a couple of hours, sometimes take a couple of weeks, that are ways of linking the way that you use your body to the way that you write your poems. And the idea, we've been thinking about poems that like take up some space, like give you something to do with your body in a moment of tremendous weight, and thinking about work that puts the body in the service of the poem feels really right to me, because I don't know what to do with being in a body right now, especially a body that like kind of shouldn't exist as far as Donald Trump is concerned. And so remembering that work feels really helpful to me right now.
Somatic Poetics.
Yeah.
C.A. Conrad. Gabe and I happily participated in a poem talk about one of his many experiments in somatic poetics, and that was a fairly simple one conceptually. And Erica was involved in that too in New York, and Trace Peterson. It was a really good one. I recommend it. Go back to the poem talk, look for the C.A. Conrad episode, and you'll see one where we studied 2 poems out of 7, I think, in which Conrad ingested things, mostly food, only of a certain color, and then wrote a poem as a body in the environment of that color, and it's good. It's very good. So, Eric, final thoughts. What works?
Works to remember that others have been here before. 197 years ago in Italy, Percy Shelley received news of the Peterloo massacre and the horrible intrusion of the state upon the body of an innocent populace. He went on, in a moment that was very dark, to create a dozen of the greatest poems in the English language, including Prometheus Unbound. During his lifetime, Shelley never knew the political impact of what he had done. All he knew was that there are 40 or 50 people who took his work seriously. Among the people that would read him, Thoreau, Marx, Engels, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela. Shelley's words have changed our political future. There are going to be people who are going to be thinking today, why am I writing poetry? Why am I reading poetry? Only these people around here, only a few of them will ever see it. I want you to remember that those have come before us, had the strength to believe that words and ideas can matter, and the terrible political mistakes of the past could be changed. We're in a dark time, but we don't have to give up.
Thank you very much, Eric. We're going to go to Carlos and then Sierra. Can you both be quick? Hey, Carlos.
Hey, something that works. The thing actually that keeps coming to mind for whatever reason is this video by Eileen Miles called American Poem, which is such a counter
Performed when she was running for president.
Yes. And I watched it recently about a week ago, and God, yeah, if you just want to be enveloped by like a very different kind of charisma and energy, it's a great video to watch. Really fun, it's poignant, but also sort of fun. So I would recommend it.
I love that. That's a great suggestion. Can you pass the mic back to Sierra? I just before you start, Eileen Miles posts constantly on Facebook, and I'm looking for one that Eileen Miles wrote. I will not go home. I am not home. He gets points for candor. There's a lot I can't read. There was one very heartening one. Boy, it's so many ago. Something like, it's time to get up and do stuff. But anyway, Eileen Miles, also great Instagram. Sierra, final thoughts, something that works.
Shout out to my dad for taking ModPo with me.
Yeah, and we looked at his essay.
I love sharing these types of spaces with him. And I'm really happy that even if I'm not home or near him, I can still, talk about stuff that we both enjoy and love together, and also share that with this community that I've come to care and love a lot in the past few years.
Beautiful.
In terms of what works, I think a lot of things work. And I think that's what we need to be focusing on in these times of trouble and of darkness. I think that something that works, and I think it's a more macro statement because I'm just thinking about works of literature in general, but I think the act of writing and the act of and literature itself to preserve ourselves and also to say what we have wanted, what we want to say, and what we will say. And I think that will always work as long as people like us are around, which they will be, because there will always be a need for them.
Fantastic, thank you. Yeah, with all the focus on the Second Amendment, maybe they'll leave the First Amendment alone for a few weeks. Phew, that was not that was not a positive thing to say. I want to say three things that work, and I have the host's prerogative of making them three. One is quick. Nick Montfort works. Nick is on the let's have some fun with language side of this thing, and he's in ModPo Plus for week 9, and he will be with us in the forums at the end of this week, and I will put in an announcement. He's going to come in and talk, and I'll make sure that everybody knows that he's there. He's great. The second thing that works, too, it's a version of what Bernadette wanted us to do, which is to look in the mirror and then make sure you don't write about yourself, defying that narcissism that's so ready at hand. And that's a great challenge. And I think Mazostics have done that for ModPo people in the last 24 hours. And I just want to quickly read 3 Mazostics, or maybe 2. The first one is Caroline Harris here of our class. She used the first verse of Whitman's Song of Myself as the source text, and the question, who am I, as the spine words. And so here is Walt Whitman as written through by Caroline Harris and the Mazostic poem generator. Shall born parents, now 37 years old, perfect health, hoping schools, but check energy, I myself, and sing every and from they are, speak nature. The second is my quickie. I wrote through Trump by using Rogue State as the seed text. A rogue state, honey, strange just state, my defense, pierce a misrule. And finally, Sophia Pandea, who I think I saw a tweet from. So Sophia is joining us this morning from the West Coast, from Sonoma. This was election eve. She chose America as the spine of her Mazostic, and the source text is one of her own poems, which is called The United States of Amnesia. To the states, albatross neck of mocha frappuccino, one of my favorite lines created by a machine. Albatross neck of mocha frappuccino at 9/10 of teeth submerge in this melting pot super of guillotined, cropped, and the immigrant you. And finally, something else that works, keying off of Syrah's first shout out, my dad, Sam Filreis, he works. Dad, the other day, some jerk, Ann Coulter, tweeted the following. She tweeted the following. If only, you know this, if only those who voted were only people who had 4 grandparents who were born in the United States, Trump would win a 50-state landslide. I actually don't doubt that as information, but okay. So then I was very upset by that, because I think that immigration is what has always made this country amazing from the start. My dad had 2 parents who were immigrants who ran for their lives from Europe, from Poland, as Jews. He was 17, and the war against fascism came, fighting back in Europe, and he enlisted. Deferring college, deferring all the antics on Coney Island that he was into, deferring several years of growing up in the United States. He could have avoided it, but he didn't. He fought. And I don't like Tom Brokaw's phrase, the greatest generation, but I think my dad's generation is pretty damn great. The son of immigrants fought for the country. He was not in Ann Coulter's figuring. He would not vote. He's in Florida now, 90 plus years old, and he's in one of those blue counties. He works because when it came time for his aesthete son, who's only interested in antics and poetry and stuff that's not real, wanted to do poetry, he could have said, engineering is good. you have the mind for law school. Other people in my family said that, not him. He said, what the hell did I fight for? What the hell did I become a suburbanite for? If not to give you the choice to do this marginal stuff. This comes full circle because when we went down to West Palm Beach recently and had a meetup, I said to my parents, Sam and Lois, do you want to come? No, this is ridiculous. You know, we don't like to do this stuff. You know, like, are you going to do Gertrude Stein? No, we're not. But they came, and soon you'll be able to watch the video of a close reading. And my dad didn't say anything, but he was in the circle. He was a very old guy, very with it though. And we were doing a poem by Philip Whalen that's partly about the Cold War. It's about October 1962, which was a time when I, as a six-year-old, I was hiding under desks to keep me alive as a response to the inevitable atomic bomb that was going to be launched from Cuba, or Cuba, as they were saying, or Cuba, I guess, as Kennedy was saying. And my dad, when we got to this point in the poem, in the video recorded ModPo close reading, he had something to say about the Cuban Missile Crisis. And it was about protecting his family and freedom and all that stuff. The Cuban situation partly came from forced immigration from Batista's successor. Batista was our responsibility. Castro's turning toward the Soviets was something that could have been avoided by accepting our neighbors 90 miles away. And so there's a line of continuity from Sam's believing that immigrants can be Americans to my studying poetry, because he not only enabled it, but when I started writing a senior thesis on William Carlos Williams, which, as I've said here before, was not something that my professors wanted me to do, my dad not only supported it, but he drove into New York to New Directions Press, got all the books, actually met Jay Loughlin, took the books, and drove them up to New York State to deliver them to me. So here's to Dad. And I'm glad that earlier I read my daughter's acknowledgement that I had created an environment where she can get through this, and I fortunately still have my dad for it. There's your lineage. Thank you to everyone who does the work. And also, in honor of Gabe's reminding us that we need to have some fun. And tea. Keep up the nerdness. I know, Emily, you don't have much of a choice. Yeah, that's true. Keep up the nerdness. Next week, we're going to be doing our final week, week 10. We're going to have some fun. Erica Baum, whose great work is in there, is going to join us in the forums. It's going to be great. Maybe a week from now, we can talk about other stuff other than gloom. Max, you're the only one left in the ModPo, in the whatever those called, Google Hangouts, but we acknowledge Erica, and who else was there? And Jake. Gabe, thank you so much. Really, I have such affection for your approach to things. Yeah, you're going to blush. Emily, you're the best. I mean, you stick with what you care about. You stick with your values, and you always find a way to apply them to whatever we're talking about. Seriously, it's one of the things that I just admire you so much for, that adaptability. Davey, thanks for the hug. Thank you so much.
You can always have a hug, Al.
Yeah, okay, good. That's cool. Eric, thank you for being at the table today and for your wisdom always. Carlos, thank you, man. To the 88ers for coming today, and Sarah, who said something, thank you. Anna, you're such a mensch. It's very difficult for me to be in a line of sight with you because you react very strongly. Thank you, my dear. Thank you for everything. Chris and Zach, you're the best, both of you. Thank you so much. And thanks to people who called, and among them are, and I just got to say their names because they're so great. Eric, of course, here. Philip Drexler called. Jim called with that great question about Black Mountain. Alice from Australia via New York, and others. Thank you all. Have a great day if you possibly can, and we will see you soon.